are in the second edition. There's a few more rules, but the main edition is that I have several chapters that talk about sort of larger email marketing concepts, larger email marketing principles, such as the subscriber lifecycle, or talking about deliverability sort of on a bigger scale, that sort of take all the rules and weave them together to give you sort of the bigger picture. So the goal with the first edition was to chop up email marketing into tiny little bits so you can clearly understand all these bits and how you can focus in on one thing at a time and make it better. After talking about it for a year, it became clear to me that some of the forest was getting lost because of so much focus on the trees.
Sure.
So the second edition tries to kind of break everything down and then reassemble everything so that you can understand how all the pieces fit together and work together.
Great.
I would highly encourage you to get the second edition if you enjoyed the first. It's very different. It's like 120 pages of brand new material.
Oh, great.
And then, of course, updates throughout everything else.
So you're with ExactTarget now, is that correct?
So you can clearly understand all these bits. Sorry, hold on one second.
No, you're fine.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Are you with ExactTarget now?
Yes, I am.
And were you with ExactTarget when you wrote the first edition?
So when I wrote the first edition, when I published the first edition, I had just joined ExactTarget.
Okay.
So I had joined ExactTarget in late January, and then the first edition came out in early March.
Okay, excellent.
Of last year.
So your perspective, I mean, just through that transition, I would think would change somewhat, right? Right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, before I was with ExactTarget, I was with Responses,
okay,
which is another large digital marketing vendor.
Sure.
Quite similar. It's interesting. The whole email marketing industry has been shaken up quite a bit in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Responses got acquired by Oracle for like $1.5 or $2 billion or something like that.
Right.
And of course, ExactTarget got acquired by Salesforce.com for $2.5 billion.
Right.
Silverpop, which was sort of the number 3 player, they got acquired by IBM,
right,
who had in earlier years acquired Eloqua. So the email marketing industry and sort of the digital marketing software industry is undergoing a pretty a transformation moment right now.
Sure.
Where everyone's realizing the value of marketing in part of the whole suite,
right,
and is integrating it into all the other aspects of what organizations do. So at Salesforce, obviously marketing ops is getting integrated into sales and into service. Everyone's kind of recognizing that all these pieces really need to work together in a very orchestrated way and to tap into all the data that the other groups have. So we're in a really interesting sort of maturation. We've definitely outgrown sort of the gawky teenage years, and now we're all getting married. We're all getting hitched up and starting families, and and kind of going, if you follow the metaphor. So it's a really interesting time to be in the industry.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting, and we could geek out for hours. I haven't really crossed the marketing automation bridge with the class yet, but I've been using Salesforce since 2004. I used ExactTarget and actually migrated to Pardot last February for the marketing automation, and I realized they both offer automation services, but for us and what we're able to pull off, the integration between the landing pages, between the emails, fantastic. And so after we speak tonight, I'm actually going to talk a good bit about marketing automation. And so it's interesting to see how database companies, Oracle and Salesforce, are now migrating into this communication space, and how, like you said, how it's integrating all these things together. It's fascinating to watch it happen from the outside.
It's worth pointing out that Pardot is part of Salesforce now as well.
Right. I'm sorry. I meant to say that. Yeah, they're all under the same umbrella, which was an interesting acquisition. Like, how that worked around the same time, right? Didn't ExactTarget and Pardot occur within a year of each other?
Yes, ExactTarget acquired Pardot, and then Salesforce acquired us. So Pardot is part of Salesforce via ExactTarget.
Okay.
So Pardot is a B2B like lead automation company, whereas ExactTarget is a B2C marketing play. Like our clients are big guys like the Gap and Home Depot that push out billions of email messages. So it's on sort of a different scale.
Sure.
For sure. But also, as you know, the considerations between B2C and B2B are really different. I've heard some people talk about how B2C and B2B are kind of merging and coming together. I think that's a real load of malarkey. Like,
I agree.
They're really different processes. The pre-purchase part of a B2C interaction is really short. Compared to a B2B, building that relationship and getting to that purchase point for B2B can take a really long time. And then, of course, the post-purchase for B2B is also really long, whereas in B2C, it's almost non-existent.
Right. So to give you an idea of the makeup of our class, we sort of have all different representations. We've got people from Volkswagen, people from TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. We have from Blue Cross Blue Shield a variety of big businesses and then some small businesses. And so the point of the class obviously is to learn how to leverage the technologies. And as it turns out, we cover a broad swath of things. You can tell from what I was saying. But what do you think is helpful to get people started down the track, and sort of the importance of email and as far as what the lifespan, what do you think that looks like, the importance of email over time as a communication platform?
Yeah, email marketing is really interesting. We've gone through a long phase where there was a lot of social media people were rah-rahing, saying that email marketing is dead, and we're like in a post-email world. And of course, that was wildly untrue. Everyone is coming back around to the fact that that email is tremendously valuable. Obviously the big data has revitalized email. Frankly, all the things that people said were going to kill email have only made email stronger. Social has made email stronger. Mobile has made email really strong and almost like instantaneous now, in the same way that SMS is. So all the things that were supposed to kind of tear email apart have actually made email, much more vibrant, much more relevant. And I think the thing to really keep in mind is that email is really a it's very organic. It is still growing. It's still changing. There's new functionality coming out all the time, and every new platform that comes out changes email in some way. Obviously, I'm talking to you now on my iPhone. In 2000, it was the first phone that can interpret HTML emails, and of course now every phone can do that. So the iPhone really started that. So I think that's really important to recognize, is that email is changing, it's growing, it's very organic. At the end of the second edition of my book, I have a section that talks about sort of the future of email, what it might look like. I think that the wearables, especially really tiny wearables that that are just like kind of ear fobs, what is that going to do to email? What is the Internet of Things going to do to email? When your car is reading an email to you, we haven't really, rendering is a tremendous challenge for email because there are so many devices. It's such an open system that, Kindles can read email and phones can read emails and all kinds of computers and everything. What happens when your refrigerator can read an email to you? What happens when your car can? Obviously, it's just going to get more and more complicated. And so I talk about sort of like, audio transcription, what in an email gets read and what doesn't. I think that's going to be, one of the things that comes down the line. So email design, once again, will sort of morph in a pretty dramatic way when that happens. But there's all kinds of things that are coming down the line that are going to change email marketing in a pretty big way, but I think all to the benefit. The number one thing that's important to remember with email, and the reason why I think it's a great long-term bet, is because it's an open platform. Nobody owns it.
Right.
And that's a huge differentiator. At the beginning of the second edition, I talk about how there's sort of the paid, owned, earned media model that everyone talks about. And there's been a lot of talk lately about how social is really leased media. And I really love that concept, and I think a lot of people are feeling burned by Facebook right now when their organic reach is just going into the toilet and disappearing on them. I think it's really important to recognize that that is not owned. That is leased. The rules change. The data is not yours. Facebook owns that data. Twitter owns that data. They can change the rules. They can change everything whenever they want to. I also put forward in the book that email is also not owned. I term it granted media. And that's because it's this open platform. It has lots of masters, and that there are gatekeepers. And that all those different stakeholders can decide whether or not your emails make it to the inbox, and they can determine what it looks like when it gets there. So it's really, there's a different set of rules. It's a really different kind of media, but that's the power. That's the big plus and the big minus for email, is that it's an open platform. So you have tremendous rendering issues. You have deliverability concerns, but on the upside, it's this ubiquitous platform that, since it's owned by so many masters, it's never going to go away. Really the only thing I'm concerned about in terms of something undermining email is I'm waiting for the first open platform social media platform. When there's a social media platform that's kind of built like email, where updates can get sent across multiple different platforms, that's when I'm going to start to be a little bit concerned. Sure. I mean, and frankly, I think a platform like that might have email sort of embedded in it. But I think email is a great long-term bet. Again, talking about integration into the wider sales and service operations. Everyone's really coming back around to it right now, and I think all of these acquisitions kind of show that.
Sure.
So it's a great long-term bet.
Yeah, and so I think that's interesting. Certainly with Gmail, I think Gmail sort of threw a curveball in the last 2 years with the tagging and the different automatic sorting and labeling of emails that came in. But you get there right at the beginning of your book when you start out with. It's interesting to me that you start out with the CAN-SPAM Act. That's the very first place that you start. But it's this immediate segue to really permission and ultimately to relevance. And so in some ways, good email marketing, I think, is about being relevant at the time of need, whatever that is. And so you can avoid all of the filtering and all of those things if you're relevant. But what do you see happening from a larger level? Somebody just tweeted a minute ago that they find emails becoming obsolete because they are on so many lists that it's just they're pushing all of that aside. And so, I know that's a lot of the noise, that there's just there's so much out there that it's overwhelming. But it is a great medium for person-to-person interaction, which is why I think the marketing automation, things like Pardot that are response-based, that create relevance. What is your advice in general to using a mass email system and still maintaining relevance? How do you do that?
Well, sure. Well, I start with the CAN-SPAM Act because there's still like this school of thought out there that email is like direct mail, and so I wanted to, from the get-go, point out that it's not. Right. These are not similar platforms at all. You get someone's street address, you can send them stuff until you get tired of doing it, right. And they can't really stop you. Email is incredibly different than that. And the big difference is the price structure, right? Mm-hmm. It's super cheap to send email, but people's time is really valuable. Right. And so the gap between those two things, between the cost to send and people's time, that's relevance in between. But it all starts with permission, because you have to be welcome. Because if they're not expecting you, then it can't possibly be relevant. So it all starts with permission, and then relevance, you're right, is the next thing. So how do you do that? So one of the great things that's going on right now, again, is big data. We have tons of data, and companies are doing a better job of mobilizing that data. But I'm a huge fan of triggered emails. I'm a huge fan of personalization, of dynamic content. There's all kinds of things you can do to get really targeted information, in those emails being sent to people. But I think to kind of go back to the premise of your question is that we get so many messages, and it seems so overwhelming. How can this continue? And I was concerned for a while. I've been tracking retailers in particular for years, kind of like 8 years now, and every year per subscriber email volume was increasing about 15%. And I did some projections for a colleague of mine. I'm actually here in Indianapolis today. Connections, which is our big annual conference, is starting tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
8,000 digital marketers here in Indy. It's really huge, the largest digital marketing conference in the world.
Wow.
It's pretty fantastic. It's pretty exciting. But I was pulling some data and doing some projections for a friend of mine who's speaking, and we looked at he wanted to talk about email marketing in 2004 versus in 2014, and I did some projections on email volume on a per subscriber basis from retailers, and I think, just remembering off the top of my head, I think in 2004, over the course of a year, the average retail subscriber of retail promotional message would get 65 emails over the course of a year. This year, it's on track to be, I think it's 265. So a pretty massive increase in volume. However, if you look at the data, if you look at the engagement data, and if you look at surveys and of consumer acceptance of email, of consumer preference, channel preference, like when we ask consumers, what channels would you like to get promotional messages via, they always say email. Email is their number one, and email is almost synonymous with those kinds of communications. That number really hasn't changed in years. Consumer acceptance of email has not gone down. And despite email volume on a per subscriber basis from brands going up tremendously, like ridiculously so, over the past decade, what we see in terms of open rates and click rates and conversion rates hasn't really changed. It just hasn't.
Right.
So it seems it sort of defies like what your general interaction is with your inbox. Like, oh, I get so much email. Right. And I kind of laugh when I see companies, kind of turning off their email and stuff. It's kind of like saying people communicate with me too much, and I don't like that. Right. It seems a little silly. And I think we have to remember that in the case of marketing messages, that these are opt-in. So if people think they're receiving too many messages, they can just opt out, or they can hit the spam button, which they also do.
Right.
So consumers are completely in control of that, and a lot of marketers also give people the option to opt down, which is reduce the frequency at which they receive messages from a particular brand. I don't have any firm data on that, but that's becoming a fairly routine thing. If you go to the unsubscribe page for a brand, right, a lot of them, Staples does this, a lot of big brands will allow you to cut the frequency in half or less, to go down to like 1 email a month or 1 email a week or whatever it is. So there's a ton of control. So I kind of like our day-to-day interactions with our inbox, but our perceptions are not really very accurate as to what's really going on.
Sure, that's good. What are you tracking? What do you see from a behavior standpoint that's changed? And I don't mean that from the pure metrics. I used ClickTail for a long time, where I could go in and watch someone's behavior on page and really try to learn how they're interacting with the information. Are there tools out there that are allowing you to get inside an inbox, as it were, and really more than open and more than, but really scroll time? Were they paying attention on page? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's stuff called heat mapping,
Okay.
where you can track where someone's eyes are looking in an email, and so that can give you it's really helpful for design. So you can
Yes.
see if you're designing your emails in a way that take advantage of the natural reading behavior.
Yeah.
So you can see if people are stalling out.
Well, you start to get there with the A/B testing when you're talking about A/B, and I was just curious how much further, because I mean, in the emails that we send out, we do a lot of A/B testing, and
Great.
it's surprising how much changing this headline to that headline, how much changing this color box or putting the call to action on the right or the left.
Yeah.
It's surprising what changes that can make, and yet I find it very difficult. I find it very difficult to measure like I would with eye tracking or with heat mapping on a web page.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely tools available. I mean, they tend to be used at critical moments, like as part of a redesign or, pre-redesign to kind of, give you ideas of where things are breaking down. You can use your click-to-open rates to also identify, what's going on inside a particular email design. So there are tools available.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, but A/B testing is kind of a wondrous thing. It's amazing how very small changes sometimes can dramatically affect how people behave, and and that's why I consider A/B testing to be part of relevance. Like, you have to be testing, otherwise it's like a form of listening.
Right. No, I think that's right. That's really good. Well, I'll open it up. I've monopolized many of the questions, so I'll open it up to the class. Does anybody have any questions for Chad? Everyone's on mute, and they've all
and everyone's muted.
And they changed their pictures to their profile pictures. I don't know what that means. I think everybody's asleep. You guys have any questions in the classroom? Oh, they're paused.
Mark asked a question.
What? About what? Yeah, we're here.
Great. All eyes are on you. Do you have a question?
Me?
Not sure. I don't have any questions.
I like the banter. I enjoyed the conversation. Kind of answered everything we were thinking about.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
So, one of the things so I was doing an interview with a reporter ahead of the book being released, and she asked me, what's the one reason why people should buy this book? And clearly I hadn't prepped that well, because I had to think about it for a minute. But then I came back to success metrics, and I think this is really important for everyone to realize. Whether or not you guys end up working in a marketing department, or if you're above a marketing department, people can get really confused about what they're trying to achieve with an email marketing campaign. And I find that there's an awful lot of focus on what I call surface metrics: list size,
Right.
open rates,
Right.
campaign metrics. There's an awful lot of focus on these surface metrics that don't really tell you what's really going on. I prefer that everybody use what I would refer to as deep metrics. So that's list productivity, conversion rates, and subscriber lifetime value. So really making sure that you're measuring to the end of things with conversions, making sure you're looking at productivity, which is again sort of measuring through to the end. So engagement rates are kind of kind of mid funnel, high funnel. Measure those bottom of the funnel metrics, and then really importantly, subscriber lifetime value. Taking a look at not just sending campaigns and measuring the results of a campaign, because in isolation, certain campaigns can look really good, but the halo or the after effect of those campaigns can dampen the results of your next campaign and the campaign after that and the campaign after that.
Right.
I guess a really simple way of saying that is a campaign that has great conversion rates, but also generates tons of spam complaints or lots of unsubscribes. That would be a campaign that maybe on the surface generated a lot of revenue or a lot of profit, but because the unsubscribe rates and spam complaint rates were so high, you lost audience for your future emails. So your future emails are going to be less effective because of this particular campaign that you sent. So it's all about being customer centric, subscriber centric. There's a guy from A.T. Kearney that I quote in the book, and he says that your customers are your asset, not your stores, not your e-commerce site. And and I guess maybe I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I had that exact same thought in like 2004 in the wake of Best Buy announcing a bunch of CRM initiatives. And at the time, it certainly wasn't true. But with big data and all the technology that we have at our fingertips now, it's absolutely possible to run your company sort of upside down. Instead of focusing on the products you put on the shelf and trying to like tell people about the products so they buy the products, you flip it around and your inventory is really your customers, not your products. Right. And you're trying to say, okay, well, I have this inventory of customers. What products can I give to them? Let me find the right products for these people, because these people are our assets. These are the things that keep us in business, not the products that are out on the shelf. So I feel like businesses have been kind of flipped upside down, and some companies have embraced it, and some companies have not. But I think that's like one of the really big challenges, is that everything's kind of been turned upside down. Everything's become very customer, client centric. And that's the way I would challenge everybody to look at not only their email programs, but all of their marketing programs, especially ones that are sort of on that one-to-one level. Right. Obviously, TV campaigns can't be treated that way, at least not yet. But I would challenge everybody to make sure you're looking at those deep metrics, those customer-centric metrics, because one of the things that we see routinely is that I get questions all the time from marketers saying, my CEO or my CMO wants me to do X. I know it's a really bad idea. Can you help me out and point me to some resources that I can use as ammunition to convince the executive that it's a bad idea. And so one of the goals of my book, hopefully, is to get it in the hands of executives so that they understand better what they should be aiming for. Because obviously executives, they set the KPIs. Right. And when they tell email marketers, you're going to get a bonus if your list size exceeds, X hundreds of thousands or X millions of subscribers, that's the wrong goal. Unqualified, list growth is a horrible goal, because you'll end up just having deliverability problems. You're going to have low quality subscribers. So, it really is important for not only email marketers but also executives and other people within an organization to understand what are we really shooting for here. Otherwise, you can just water it all down and really hurt yourself.
Well, it's interesting. There were two things that came in on. One came in on Twitter and one came in on Google Plus. But and it was sort of along the same lines that I was thinking, that bulk email is annoying till it's not. In the idea that I think about Amazon. I think Amazon, I ignore probably 80% of Amazon's emails until it's extremely relevant and it makes a product suggestion that I didn't see before. And I think that's when it's not so annoying that I'm going to unsubscribe from Amazon, but that it's sort of just a nudge, and it's a continual nudge. It's almost like push information, back in the day when we were thinking about that. So I guess where do you see that line, and where do you draw that line between the annoying and the relevant? Where do you see that falling?
Well, I would point out that not everyone uses email the same way. I mean, this is one of the tricky things about email, is that everybody has their own strategies for how to use it. And one of the strategies that's pretty prevalent is that people will sign up, and this is not the way that marketers would like people to use it, but what they do is they'll sign up for emails from a brand, and they'll just let it build up in their inbox. And then when they're in the market to buy something, then they go and they search their inbox and they look for the most current email from that particular brand, and then they try to see what the current offers are. Now, obviously, that's not how marketers would like their emails used, but it's actually a pretty common behavior. So again, like when you talk about relevance, when you talk about frequency, and what's not enough relevance and what's too much frequency, consumer behaviors are not they're so varied
Right.
that there's not always like a good clean answer to it. But the ultimate answer is that you have to watch your metrics and let that feedback help you out. So there's been a pretty big debate in recent years about frequency and how much is too much. There have been some proponents that email is so crazy, the return is so crazy, why wouldn't you send one more email? And it's been like a very unsophisticated conversation that we've had. And really where we need to get to is that some subscribers are not receiving enough email, while other subscribers are receiving way too much. And the way that I try to talk about it in the book is that in the same way that during certain seasonal events, and then retail is always a great example of this, during the holiday season, retailers send their subscribers a lot more email. In fact, from the volume that we'll see in September. So over the course of September, the volume that subscribers will receive from retailers will grow about 50% on a monthly basis by the time we get to December. So that's a pretty huge discrepancy. But engagement levels don't really change very much, and that's because people are in the market to buy. So they welcome and tolerate the additional email volume because they're actively looking to buy things. So if you translate that over onto the individual basis, so if overall email volume is matched to sort of seasonal relevance or seasonal interest, why not match individual email volume to individual interest levels, which we have lots of data on. Opens, clicks, conversions, that can tell you how much people are enjoying getting your emails. So obviously at the low end, inactive subscribers who are no longer clicking, no longer opening, and haven't in 6 months, 9 months, a year, I advocate very, very hard that they should be receiving dramatically less email. It makes your engagement levels in the eyes of ISPs look way better, way better, which is good for your deliverability. Now those guys should clearly be getting less. But at the other end, there are a lot of subscribers that could easily get more. And the best way to do that is through triggered messages, through segmentation. These are the safest ways. If you create, one more, post-purchase email, guess what? That post-purchase email is going to people who are buying. And those people are probably going to be fine with receiving that email, especially if it's personalized and related to their purchase, which obviously it should be in some fashion. Unless it's like a blanket sort of like review request or something like that.
No,
but those people are highly engaged. So that's a wonderful way to send your best subscribers more email. I refer to this as super engagement as opposed to re-engagement, which is what you do with inactive subscribers.
Right.
So there's a really big spectrum that you're dealing with, and email marketers are getting much better at being able to identify not just segments of subscribers, but tailoring activity to individual subscribers. through a lot of analytics, a ton of animation. So it's all about sort of addressing what's appropriate on a very individual level. And thankfully, we've got a lot of wonderful technology now that can do that.
That's great. That's great.
Hey, Chad. Oh, go ahead.
How they use it instead of trying to guess and do all the analytics and data mining to try to figure out how people are going to respond. Why can't you just have that conversation with them that says, hey, we don't know if you're going to use it this way or if you're going to use it that way, and we'd really like to not bother you with our communication. We want it to be relevant to you.
So just asking them?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the problem with asking people is that anyone who's done any kind of surveying will tell you what people say they want, what people say they will do, turns out to be very inaccurate. People, in the moment think they're going to do one thing, they think they're going to behave one way, and it's not that they're not being truthful, but it's just that people are just not very good judges of their own intentions, of their own behaviors. And that's not to discount it. There's something called progressive profiling, which is where you do ask people what they're interested in or what they might plan to do, and it's super handy at inflection points in relationships. Or or seasonal inflections. So progressive profiling is wonderful going into the holiday season. The holiday season for B2C marketers is sort of a strange period because all of a sudden the people that they got to know over the last 10 start behaving really weirdly because all of a sudden they're shopping for all these once-a-year gifts. They're buying something for Uncle Henry, and they're buying something for their niece. So they're making all these really odd purchases, and it's really incredibly difficult to use analytics to predict that kind of stuff. And that's where just asking people what they're interested in, what they're likely to do, can be really valuable. But in general, what we find is that the analytics of the behavior analytics, as imperfect as that is actually way better than asking people stuff. There's also the fact that when you ask people to give you a response, the uptake of that is not awesome. If you're getting 20% of people responding to some kind of a survey, even if it's like a one question kind of a survey, that's usually pretty good, 20% completion. So usually behavior, you have a lot more data and it tends to be more accurate unless, again, you're at some sort of inflection point.
Hey, Chad. Josh Green here with the Yellow Group. I come from big business. I'm in healthcare. We use data and analytics for a lot of the things that we do, whether it's predicting health outcomes or trying to minimize cost or a lot of different things. But as it relates to marketing, I'm more interested on the small business side. It's real easy for a big business to acquire analytics tools and things like that. I'm a big fan of Amazon and the analytics that they use. Anytime you receive an email, it's driven by your activity, whether it's a purchase or whether you were browsing or whatever the case may be. Can you speak to the tools and things that are available for like a small business, some of that maybe doesn't have the capital outlay to get a big tool but still wants to use that for their campaign?
Sure. I mean, I would point out that I'm not really a technology guy. I'm really a strategy guy. But I can tell you that the perception that analytics and all this stuff is really just for big companies, I don't think is really accurate anymore. Certainly there are a wide variety of email service providers. There's an ESP for everybody, and even some of the smaller players have pretty good analytics, and the cost of everything is shrinking. And I guess one of the things I would challenge you to think about is not about the cost, but about the returns. I think this is also one of the areas where email marketing has issues. Email marketing has a PR problem, frankly, of being considered cheap. And other technologies, I think, have a PR problem of being thought of as being expensive. Everything is getting wildly cheaper all the time. And I can say with great confidence that vendors want your money. They want to take your money, and they want to give you something that's going to work for you. We have customers, like Gap and Home Depot that are massive, huge accounts. Best Buy, these are just massive, massive accounts. And we also have, a lot of not very large accounts, including a lot of nonprofits. So, the technology scales, and there's a whole lot of a la carte pricing now. I know we do a lot of that, where, we can give you certain functionality, and then you can kind of work your way through various pieces as you go. So I would really challenge you to first of all, not assume that everything is too expensive. I think a lot of vendors will work with folks because obviously as you succeed, you'll get larger, and then your account will be worth more. So from their perspective, it's not, you could be worth their time. Right now, invest a little bit of money in you, in the hopes that you're going to become a bigger, more successful business down the line, and they'll have you as a loyal customer. But I would again encourage you to also think about returns. It's not just about the money you put in; it's about the money you get out. So you might be willing to spend more if you can get a higher return.
Sure. And just to further that, the reason I ask is a good friend of mine has a small business of her own, and her background is actually email marketing. But I find that the strategy that she uses is more of the social media. She has her own website and those types of things. So I was just curious, what could be forcing her away from that. So that was just kind of the background of that question. But
sure. Yeah, no, there's it's funny. Every channel has their own sort of PR issues, and the perception around social is that it's cheap and it's easy, and that anybody can do it. You can just open a Twitter account and you can start tweeting, and the same thing with Facebook. And I think that what's been going on at Facebook, recently with they're changing their algorithms and organic reach, dwindling, down to almost nothing. I think that's really been a wake-up call for a lot of people, and so I think we're seeing a lot more interest back into email, and frankly into blogs, into truly, into things that are more stable, more in the sort of the away from leased and more into owned and granted media. That's going to be more stable and isn't owned by a Facebook or a Twitter where they can change the parameters of what you thought you were going to get. But the DMA, the Direct Marketing Association, does this big channel study every year, and every year email comes out at the top of that list, returning in the neighborhood of $40 for every dollar you spend on it. Whereas social returns, I don't know, it's $10 or less for every dollar you spend on it. So I don't know what's keeping your friend from doing it. I don't know.
Well, I appreciate the thoughts. Just curious. So
sure.
Thanks.
Thanks for your question.
I have something on small businesses too. My father's company was working, our reservation system was working with ExactTarget, and we really enjoyed that, and it was going really well. And anyways, recently they changed their program. They're no longer using ExactTarget, and the email system that they're using right now pretty much sucks. And, I mean, especially, I guess, compared to ExactTarget, I guess I didn't realize how great, because we were able to break down, like we were saying, to really personalize emails. We were able to see, with the program that we were using, we were able to really break it down and personalize emails, I guess. And so I guess I was wondering from a very personal perspective, can we, because we were working through this program before, which was using ExactTarget, can we now just, even though we're a fairly small business, we're only sending out about 16,000 emails. I don't know how big, I know ExactTarget uses lots of really big companies. Can we have a relationship directly with ExactTarget?
Yeah, so I'm not a salesperson, so I don't know how we structure all of our relationships. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. I don't know why they left. I don't know if it was a cost issue or what. So yeah, I don't know that I can really speak to your question. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, there's definitely different functionality at different companies. Absolutely, obviously, but there are a lot of choices out there. I'm sorry that your friend's company ended up at one that wasn't that great.
Oh yeah, it's my family's.
I'm sorry.
It's actually my It's even worse.
Well, maybe now that you've seen the alternative, maybe it's worth coming back to ExactTarget.
Yeah, that's what I would love to do, and I'll probably be calling ExactTarget this week for sure. But it was great because, and I don't know, great job, I guess, because we were able to really personalize, with the, I don't know how much of that was Resmark, the system we were using, and ExactTarget, but it worked out a lot better for us.
Yeah, that really is where things are headed. Personalization, triggered messages, like these really are the future of the channel. That's the value. When you talk about other channels, when you talk about social, sure, you can do social advertising is really great. You can do like fantastic things with targeting with social advertising, but social publishing, that's just broadcast messaging, and it's not all that powerful, which is obviously why Facebook and apparently now Twitter is considering an algorithm to change what people see. Broadcast is just not all that effective, and so channels like email, where one-to-one is built into the DNA of the channel, has a real advantage. And obviously big data is part of that. I think we're just on the cusp of what big data is going to do for email marketing. We're just at the fingertips.
Good. I have a quick question.
Sure.
I work in marketing research, and we send out surveys through email. And we've noticed that, and I think it's just this in general maybe, but we've noticed that we have a lot higher of a response with our boomer-aged respondents than we do with millennials. It's just really hard to get them to engage and to take a survey. That may just be the survey. It may not be true in other forms of email to get them to click through the email. It may be different because we're sending them something that's going to take them 5 to 10 minutes or so. But we've talked about developing an app and maybe use more of push notifications and things like that to try to reach that demographic. I think that may be a little bit better of a way to do it. But surveys aside, do you have any advice or suggestions on ways to reach the millennials or the younger generation opposed to the boomers? Is there anything that kind of perks their interest? A way I could say it. Is it more in the subject, or is it more in the first few lines of the email, or what kind of attracts them?
Yeah, I'm not. I try to be upfront about what I'm an expert about and what I'm not, and millennials are definitely a tricky group of people. But But I think the critical thing about millennials is, well, I guess I would first of all say that marketing is really omni-channel, right? So email is wonderful. I'm a huge advocate of email, obviously, but I certainly don't want anyone to think that I'm saying email is great, shut down your social program, don't worry about direct mail, don't worry about YouTube. Like, that's not what I'm saying. All the channels have their own strengths, and email strength is retention, and it's also its strength is promotion. Like, people turn to it for deals and notifications now in a big way. So all the channels have their strengths. So in terms of millennials, what I know about millennials is that millennials don't like being sold to. They're going to skip, every darn commercial that comes on TV if they can humanly do it. They don't like, radio ads. They're going to, get XM radio, or they're going to listen to Pandora. They hate advertising. They hate it. They hate advertising. So to talk to millennials, you need something that doesn't look like advertising. Content marketing, I think, is the answer in a big way. Cause marketing is an answer for millennial. So part of it is content. Finding the content that they respond to. It's not just the channel, and I agree that there are some channel challenges in email with millennials. But I think a lot of it is also the content. Because if you're just doing the hard sell, millennials don't like that. Millennials think they're above that. They want to be involved in something that's that's cause related, that's information, education related, something that they can share, and even more than that, they want to be part of a community, right? They want to be sharing and taking part and being active. So there's all kinds of frankly, kind of social-oriented campaigns that you can run via email or in some fashion. There's those great email social combos that you can run that can reach millennials. So I think that, like, in a nutshell, like, I would say that there are some channel penetration issues with millennials, but I think the bigger challenge with millennials is that they hate advertising and email. Because it's traditionally been an advertising channel. Or it's used in a highly promotional way, you have to kind of change up the content. But the good news is that I think part of that's kind of already happening with email, just because of where we are on frequency. The frequency now for email is at the level that the buy message doesn't really work anymore. You have to intersperse that, with content marketing, with cause marketing, with social campaigns, that pull information from other places. And we're seeing some really innovative stuff, and certainly personalization and big data play into that as well. All kinds of information you can pull about what that subscriber is doing is really wonderful. I'm thinking about like TripIt reviews. You put in a review on TripIt, and they'll send you an email saying how many people found your review helpful. That's really cool, and that keeps people engaged because people care about whether or not the actions they're taking are meaningful ones and are helping other people. Amazon, I don't know that they do this, but they certainly could. People can click whether or not a review on Amazon was helpful to them. I hope Amazon is turning around and using that information to send back out to those reviewers saying, hey, 7 people found your review of Email Marketing Rules helpful, as a way of like letting them know like you're making a difference. You are adding to the community. Please review more things. So there's all kinds of innovation right now going around messaging. And I think that's part of the key to reaching millennials. I probably have time for one more question, and I'm looking at the clock, and I actually have a team dinner at 10:30 that I'm supposed to be at.
Sure. Well, do we have any more questions out there? Well, I think we've asked a lot, and we've asked more of you than I think you had originally anticipated. So I appreciate your time tonight, and I appreciate you going to all the additional work of connecting with us. It's been really a wonderful conversation, and you know, I have really enjoyed the book. I think it's done a nice job of bringing together so many different elements of digital and really establishing a good foundation. So again, I appreciate it, and you know, I hope that you have a fantastic connect. Do you know Mark Schaefer, by the way?
Mark Schaefer?
Yeah, we have a common connection through Mark is really good friends with Jay Baer, and I saw Jay obviously wrote your forward. So Mark does a lot of social consulting. Wrote the book The Tao of Twitter. So I'm not sure. I tweeted him while we were in here to see if he's up there or not. He's usually a conference junkie, so he may or may not be there.
Well, there's certainly a lot of people here for sure. But no, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks for making my book a part of your class. It was great talking to all of you. Sorry about the technical difficulties on the front end. I'm so glad I charged up my phone ahead of time, because now I'm down to 10%. But well, I had a great time. Thank you all for your great questions, and best of luck with the rest of the course.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
You too.
All right, cool. All right, let's see, it's 7:20. What do you guys think? Do you want to take a few minutes break, or do you just want to get through it? Get through it. All right, sounds good. All right, I'm going to stop.